Hello, everybody. My name's Tom. I'm a cannabis lawyer that's headquartered out of Peoria, Illinois, and you can find me every Wednesday in an hour from now. So I do have a tight out on Cannabis Legalization News, a fairly popular podcast. We have 30,000 plus subscribers on YouTube and maybe about like 6,000 listeners on our audio podcast. We very often talk about all the things that are cannabis legalization and cannabis licensing. That's what I do for a living. I win cannabis licenses. Here's one that we got in Illinois for a craft grow license. That one's pretty tough. We learned a lot. Today, we're probably going to talk mostly about New Jersey and Connecticut, maybe some Maine, maybe some Ohio. Ohio just dropped. I want to give a shout out to John Maklich. He's over there talking about the Ohio one. We're working together to help a lot of people. One of the things that I usually don't tell people to do is to lock down real estate. But in Ohio, that is not good advice. You absolutely need to lock down real estate in Ohio because the rules are different. And that's one of the things that you have to understand about how to win. Now, Ohio is not necessarily going to be competitive. It's still going to be quite regulated. And then a lot of the competitive states are becoming lotteries. And so now you have to apply statistical analysis. And then sometimes you're going to have to sue over your due process rights because the lotteries may be rigged. So the one in Illinois, the worst offender in Illinois' lottery rigging, spent $1.75 million on lottery tickets. So that $1.75 million on application fees. And they stuffed 185 tickets into the lottery. They had 20% of the tickets. They won 18 times. The odds on that happening are 1 in 38 trillion. So one of the other ways that you have to win a license sometimes is to sue. We're here for about an hour. I'm going to start with aspects of it. And I want to really focus on two things from New Jersey. I'm able to share my screen. One of the things from New Jersey is it's not their regulations. It's the summary of the regulations, the truncated version of it. And I want to go over that with you as I share that on the screen. And then I also made a spreadsheet. And then I'll also go over the regulations and how you should be approaching your cannabis venture in your particular jurisdiction. Last 15 minutes, we will do Q&A. I'll probably have to hop off 5 minutes to the hour because I have a podcast that is live on the internet over at Cannabis Legalization News. We'll call it 3 today. I spoke with them. Okay, well, I'm going to share my YouTube channel in the chat first. I'm not sure if you guys have ever seen it. If you have, please give us a shout. If you haven't, please go ahead and subscribe so that it can grow a little bit larger. I don't need the automatic thing to be saying. All right, no question available. Discuss. Is it discuss? I'm allowed to drop something here. All looks good on this side. Great. There's that. And so you can find my YouTube channel right there. Now I'm going to figure out how to present, share screen. Great. But first, I'm going to go pull up the things that I want to explain to you. Now, this one is for New Jersey, but New Jersey is not really all that different from all these other ones. And so there's just the actual rules, right? Yeah, that's the 160 pages of rules. Where's the 9 pages of just this is what we're trying to do. And that, I guess I don't have because it was only 9 pages. But the CRC has it. And one of the things that you need to do if you want to win a cannabis license is to read the statute and the rules on that because you're going to have to create an application. And that application is going to need to be completely compliant. Everybody believes that this is just a really cool industry that's full of partying and lots of money. And no, it's actually an industry that is full of regulations and compliance. And so those regulations and compliance has to be done a very specific way. If not, you can jeopardize your license. But fortunately, after you've been awarded a license, at least you have a due process right in them. Let's see, recreational, priority applicants. I like those. Those ones are good. Now, where is the resources, regulations? The New Jersey thing, as they've been updating their site, Kind of made it worse in my opinion. But there's the rules one. Okay, great. Now let me share my screen on that. New Jersey, I think, is doing. They're working very, very hard to do this right, and I think that's one of the reasons why they're slowing down a little bit. So here's the summary, and I would have you go to the summary first and review the summary, because the summary is going to tell you what the state wants. And the best thing that you can do in a competitive area, because the state is going to tell you exactly what they want. And why does that say mute? No, it doesn't say mute. Why does that say mute? Nope. I'm assuming that it is actually working and you can hear me. And so now I'm going to zoom way in so you can see this. There you go. And here is, again, these rules are only a month old. And they focus, the first subheading right there is equity. You see, the rules address the CRT's two core values of equity, safety, and that's it. That's what New Jersey really wants. They want equity and they want safety. And they want access to the market by small business entrepreneurs, and hold that municipalities have the authority to shape how cannabis looks on the ground based on what their community wants. And so that's a dual style of licensing, which is popular in many states, including Michigan and the West Coast. They have a dual licensing structure. Illinois or Ohio, they have a single licensing structure. And then what's the first subheading? What else is New Jersey telegraphing to you? So when you go out and build your team, they're saying, we're trying to establish 3 types of cannabis businesses that will receive priority, review and approval in the process. They're saying these are the people that we want. And so if you're trying to win a license, you need to follow, and you need to be exactly what the state wants. They're like, we're looking for social equity businesses, diversely owned businesses, or impact zone businesses. Now, diversely owned is comprised of 3 other types of businesses: certified, minority owned, woman owned, or disabled veteran owned. And then the New Jersey Department of Treasury can actually provide such certification. Impact zone businesses are fairly common in the cannabis licensing scheme that we have now. These impact zones are the areas of your state that were disproportionately impacted by the war on drugs. Horrendous, terrible, wrong, pathetic, just way too long. It's still going on. It's still Schedule 1. The Safe Banking Act just snuck through because now they're trying to tie the Safe Banking Act passing to veterans' benefits. Just deplorable, terrible. I can't, in case, I've beat that dead horse. None of us like the drug war. And the statutes are now creating repairs. So the social equity, who has been economically disadvantaged because of a cannabis conviction. Now, and that doesn't, or who has lived in these disproportionately impacted areas. That is how social equity usually is. It's these impact zones and the arrests. Now, New Jersey wanted to go beyond that and grant priority to also diversely owned businesses, not just the social equity businesses, but also the diversely owned businesses. And then the process in which they're going to do that is very often, it's called a conditional license. Now, a conditional license is being used all over the country to try to reduce the barriers of entry so that you don't have to expand on so many costs. One of the interesting things is the Ohio lottery. And if you need anything in the Ohio lottery, give us a call. I'm over at Collateral Base. You can take an image of that if you really want to, or go follow us in Cannabis Legalization News. My website, and John Makowicz is on it too, cannabisindustrylawyer.com, where we share a whole bunch of content. We're going to have a whole webinar coming out on Cannabis Legalization News about the Ohio approach. But Ohio is not reducing the barriers to entry because they're requiring real estate and financial ability to be able to gain entry to their dispensary lottery. You see this very often in medical. And so in medical, there's higher barriers to entry, more cost, and usually more competitive, or merit-based licenses. And so when you say, is that a competitive license, it means, did somebody score your application? So in theory, this Illinois Craft Grow, that was a competitive license. You had to beat out 400 other people that were competing for these 40 licenses by having the best application. Now, how do you have the best application? You go right back to what the state is looking for. And you know what? That's the team you're going to put together. You're going to put together this is the second prong. So like, what does New Jersey want? It's our 2 core values of equity and safety. And then this other stuff. I mean, like, I don't necessarily like when somebody says there's these 2 core values and then they say them. And then instead of hitting period, they put a comma and then they say facilitate and uphold. And based on where the computer, okay, so I would have said our core values as opposed to 2. Whatever, I'm not trying to leave them notes. Hopefully nobody here is from the CRC. They're wonderful people, regulators. In fact, next April 26th, we are inaugurating Regulator Day for the industry. And so it'll be fun tuning to cannabis legalization news on that. Safety is the second thing. So this is going to be your security plan. Not only is it going to be your security plan, it's going to be side effects of cannabis. So like you're going to have to teach people about how cannabis works. And then, of course, you're going to have your recall and your quarantine plans and all that. And then the next one is easing access to the market for entrepreneurs. And this gets us back to these types of conditional licenses, or New Jersey's gone further with micro business licenses. They are establishing a method where certain applicants are going to be deemed priority. And what the states always do is they say this license is a privilege, not a right, so that you don't have any constitutional rights to due process in the procedure of getting your license, which is yesterday. And so now I have clients that are still waiting to hear back on if they won their craft grow license. We have to do a 4th round of 10-day deficiency notices. The state that's scoring you may just continue to ask for things and put roadblocks and hoops in your way just to watch you go through them. So that's another way that you win a cannabis license, is that you stay on top of it. You're organized. You're very happy and healthy you're very happy and glad to work with the regulators, and you keep impeccable records, and you're very organized. Those are all, if you don't have those on your team, get those on your team, especially in a competitive state. Now, all states get kind of competitive even after the conditional period. So there's very often more people that want to get in than there are available licenses. It's going to be the same in New Jersey because they're allowing the municipality to set the number of these licenses or even opt out. And as a result, you have to be better than everybody else, including to comply with all regulations. And then sometimes they say, we go over and above. We're best in class. We do everything super amazing because your application actually says that. And that's how you beat out the next guy. The reducing of the barriers to entry through the conditional license sometimes only gets you to that level where then you have to go over those barriers, but you know that you have a license, so you're more likely to be able to attract investors. One of the first things that hundreds of people call us every month to get help in their cannabis licenses, and we try to help them by pushing them toward our Cannabis Mastermind program because it teaches them the game. It teaches them what the state's looking for, who should be on your team, how a cannabis financial model works, how a capital raise works, how much liquidity you need to be able to build the $5 million grow, all that type of stuff. Okay, and so my assistant will be getting us some more materials. The lottery is the method that many of these states are using to randomly and therefore fairly award licenses. And then if you get that, now you're in the conditional boat, and then you usually have to lock up real estate. Ohio's not doing this. They don't care about reducing the barriers to entry. When you get into adult use, you usually care about reducing your barriers to entry and your equity and your impact zones. Those types of things then come into the fray. That's what's happening in the Eastern Seaboard right now. It's what happened in Illinois. Okay, great. And I can now download this, and then I can share it with you guys by putting it, where's the homework thing? Handouts? All right, no documents available. Great, great. So I'm going to give you guys some handouts. One of them is going to be this New Jersey flow chart we're going to be going over in a bit. And then the other one is our Cannabis mastermind thing. And I'll also walk you through what you get on that, simply because one of the things that you really have to understand is your business plan. You have to understand your sources, your inputs, and all that. But more than that, you have to understand exactly what the state wants, what game the state's playing, and how you are doing everything in your power to be able to play that game. So you're going to have a conditional application that'll get you into a lottery somewhere, and you're going to have to meet the threshold there. Whatever the threshold is, you read the rules of how they're going to do the lottery. You take notes. You have an attorney who's really, really good at being organized and having everything, the records kept impeccably on your team, and you give them a percentage, and then you also pay their fee because their time is all they have to sell. They help you get into the lottery, and then you may need to have your finance guy or your statistical modeler, whiz, analysis man, your quant, and you should have one because you're going to be in, it's high finance once you get through that wicket and you have a license. Like high finance, like SPVs, hedge funds, like convertible debt, raising capital. Most mom and pop businesses aren't raising capital, and they aren't using special purpose vehicles to shunt money in places because they have to deal with IRC 280E and a whole bunch of investors. Hospitals are, except for the IRC 280E thing, but most middle market businesses, which are between $2 and $50 million in the top line every year, they don't. So your quant will help you get a lottery strategy. And now I think we are at the point where we can start looking at the regulations using the New Jersey example to go after your lottery strategies. And lottery strategies were very effective in winning the competitive Illinois dispensary application. Now, not only in Illinois did you have to have a perfect application before you got in the lottery, you then had to game the lottery. The only thing that's really being reducing your barrier to entry is now you just have to game the lottery and meet a minimum threshold to be eligible to get into the lottery. And then you have to do your complete application. So it's not like the complete application has gone away. It's just that it has been bifurcated in the sense that you're going to have this conditional application that's smaller that gets you into a lottery. And then after the lottery, if you win, you need that rest of your brick of an application that is essentially your SOPs. Everything you put in your application is a requirement of your operation. And so your 700 pages of regs that you have to read, and then the statutes and the regulations that you have to take, and then you have to put those into your application. They're just saying you don't have to do that until after you have a license. And that's really sweet of them because it takes a lot of time and it takes a lot of money to be able to get those done. You'll be getting quotes from consultants that'll range anywhere from $50,000 to $150,000. And that's before you have your litigation budget. And then sometimes you need to sue the state to get your license. It's a crazy industry, man. So let's go over some math now in the handout that I gave you regarding the New Jersey thing. Here is that. I'm going to zoom in on it. I've done a video on Cannabis Legalization News on how to hack lotteries. It's not, I don't like to use the word hack, because it seems like you're cheating. You're not. You're reading the rules and you're exploiting the rules. That's not cheating. Okay, and so here is my handy dandy little New Jersey financial sources model. And this is a term of art. Do I have the regs up? Yes, I do. That's fantastic. New Jersey has a new term of art called the financial source agreement. And they have a whole regulation regarding the financial source agreement. And this would be how you're going to stand up, provided that you aren't, and if you are a qualified purchaser, $2 million liquid, please do leave me a comment, simply because those are the types of people that you need on your team if you're going to be standing up a grow very often. They would be the types of people that you would want these financial source agreements from. But New Jersey has actually codified or regulated what you can do when you're financing these social equity businesses so that you can't screw them over. They're seeing what's going on in Illinois, where the majority owner is really just a patsy. They have no real say, even though, like, you read the operating agreement, you read how it's all working, and you can tell them, no, you're in control. They're still not in control because they're nobody, and the person who won has spent millions of dollars on lottery tickets, and they're trying to avoid that. And so they've created this financial source agreement. And I wish that it was easier for me to toggle between my camera and then the share of the screen. But whatever, I'm just going to now speak in a boring monotone so you all go to sleep. The terms of the financial source agreement include interest rates, returns, and so financial source agreements can be bargained in an arm's length transaction. And the ability to buy out the debt, like you can pay off the debt and it doesn't mandatorily convert, and no prepayment penalties. And they cannot grant an ownership interest in a license or the license holder. So will New Jersey even allow convertible debt instruments? A financial. So, like, do I need to then say, I want a financial source agreement and I'm also going to buy an option in your company? But so, like, what they say here, it can't do an ownership interest. It takes away right here. It may grant a future contingent right to obtain ownership, where a financial source is qualified pursuant to, and then it says other stuff. It has to also comply with these other aspects. You're not allowed to do an unfair advantage. Any term that's not commercially reasonable or the fair market value. I mean, look at this. They are dictating to the wealthy people what they are able to do in offering credit to the social equity people. It's fascinating. So we take a financial source agreement, we take the regulation, we create a convertible debt instrument. Again, like I said, this is a complex industry. There's special purpose vehicles, which is essentially just limited partnerships or hedge funds, private equity funds that are out there. And you could create one to do this chart that we will now share. And then I'll go over the chart before I go back to myself because it just doesn't toggle very well. Okay, so we create an SPV to hold capital and lend to winners, right? As Jersey has limited the number of licenses that you can hold. So, like, the competition isn't necessarily if it's an open state or a merit-based state. The competition it's a limited state as there's only so many licenses. So how do you become one of the ones that ends up with some ownership somewhere? As they say, the elephant's nose is under the tent. How do you get the elephant's nose under the tent? Well, you create this special purpose vehicle, which is essentially an LLC that you form as an investment purpose. So basically like a hedge fund. You have a manager of the LLC, and then you have members that have no say. So they're just basically preferred shareholders. And then that manager of the LLC manages a portfolio of assets. And what's that portfolio of assets? Well, then we have to go down the line. Now, so somebody who's wealthy enough to set up an SPV is not going to be able to be granted priority status because they'll probably earn too much money. To get priority status, you have to earn less than $200,000 a year. Now, that is the vast majority of people, but not necessarily the vast majority of people that have $2 million liquid. And so that person, that wealthy person that I just might not be able to talk out of applying for a regular application, even though explaining that conditional applications to priority applicants are what the state's really looking for. And then explaining that the financial source agreement doesn't have the same limitations as if you are an owner. So if you're an owner, and we go back to these suckers, financial source agreements, that one where it said 7. The financial source agreements are allowed to have 7 of them, but you're not allowed. And then how many management agreements? Passive investor. And so this is what New Jersey has done. They've also created this passive investor that has does not have control or decision making over the management or policies or license or applicants, business or testing lab. All right. So more than 0, but less than 5. Those ones aren't going to count towards the license limits. And then there's the impact zone person, the passive investor. And so there's one aspect of the rule that discusses the license limits. There it is, limitations on them. And so they say a license may abandon, a license shall not establish trust, license, how's that? There it is. One. A license or applicant shall have only at most one open and pending cannabis business license. And so if you're not going to go the financial source method, you just have this one that's out there. And so you can have one regular application. If you're too rich, you can't share, you don't want to be a priority applicant, you're a guy who looks like me. And so then, well, he looks like me. I wouldn't do that. I'd go the financial source way because, humility is statistics, man. And so you'd go into this conditional application where then you, in theory, could own more than 5%. Like you could own the 49% for one of them, and provide the financial source agreement that has the liquidity that you would need to invest in the company to be able to stand that company up through convertible debt that therefore would then later convert and give you a substantially larger amount of ownership and perhaps also some types of control and rights and voting. Now, let's go back to the limitations. And then in the 24-month period, then they start opening it up after 24 months. You see, after in the end of the 24-month period following February 22nd, 2021. So we're still in this period. It starts opening up then. Where is the... financial source may provide funding of up to 7 license applicants or license holders. And where is, there it is. A management services contractor may contract and provide management services with up to 5 license applicants or license holders. Now, this chart doesn't necessarily contemplate management cash flows, but you could make it more complex to also include management cash flows. So as they go right here, you have this, 49% are financial source. One of them, you could be 49% in financial source. 6 more you'd throw over as a 5% passive investor, so you don't count. And then you also have the additional statistical edge, because now you have 7 financial source agreements that you've put in there. But remember, this might come down to a conditional lottery. So in that financial source agreement, which we've crafted to be completely compliant, by the way, there would be a disclaimer that says this may only be used 7 times. And so if you're number 7, great. If you're number 8, shit, you're SOL. And that's one of the methods that you need to understand and realize. There will be data in the regulations and in the statute that will create mathematical puzzles that you're going to have to tease out and think about, how do we strategically approach this? Even in states where they say, oh no, it's this conditional thing. It's going to be a 1-page application. You get in, there's a lottery, you pay your fee. I'm looking at you, Connecticut, or I'm looking at you, Maine, specifically one city. I'm not going to mention it right now, but it's got a window going on. And then they're going to have rules to that lottery, because we really don't have the rules to the lottery. The New Jersey rules specifically say there's going to be a lottery, but we don't have the rules to it yet. And as a result of that, then you have to know what those rules are, and you have to run some data on it to see what your statistical edge would be. You have to get creative. Like, most people are just thinking about, we have this one group, we have this one team, that's what we're going to do, we're going to put it together. Probably blew some of your guys' mind, going like, no, you set up an LLC. That LLC seeds all these other LLCs with the capital. You partner up with your social equity people that are exactly what the state's looking for. I mean, exactly what the state's looking for. So we're talking about minorities. We're talking about disabled veterans. We're talking about women. We're talking about impact zone businesses. We're talking about social equity businesses. I want a portfolio of those businesses. I want a social equity business. I want a woman business. I want a minority-owned business. I want and that's kind of how you look at it. And so now this SPV is providing financial source agreements to as many people as they can stuff. And then now, I mean, you're a 5% investor. It doesn't count, right? You don't have any say. Limited partner, that's it. You would be a member of a manager-managed LLC just to the tune of 5%. That's it. I'm just along for the ride. I get my profits. I don't have a say. Here's a financial source agreement that gives me a convertible debt obligation on $1.2 million based on a valuation of $4 million, something like that, where you can control how much you'll get when it converts, especially if you set the right stuff. Now, I don't know if that will violate the terms of the financial source agreement. What if the debt can only convert at what is fair. It's literally built into the financial source agreements. So we're going to have to now create a convertible debt that isn't preset. Very often when you have a convertible debt instance, it's at a qualified financing. By that, I mean Series A, Series B, Series C. Like, so you're raising money and you're growing, right? And those were contemplated in the statute, by the way. So when after 2 or 3 years, the state's allowing you to hold more and more licenses, you've set up that roll up already. Those are the clients I'm trying to find and help them out, because those are the ones that are going to win, because I will be able to give them a statistical edge to win. Now, after all these guys have won these various licenses, then you need to go through and do the full application. And the full application is what people typically think of when they think of how to win a cannabis license. Now, we've already talked about teams, and we already talked about how the most important thing is to be exactly what the state's looking for. The second most important, and what is the state looking for exactly? Well, in the case of New Jersey, equity and safety, all right? So did you do the equity thing? Did we do this? We were going to try to get 7 portfolio conditional priority applications and an SPV that gives them money. Is that what we're doing? Because that's what I want to do. And then after that, you put together the right teams. And so the right teams are going to be the people that have the right skill set. Now, some of you may not have a cannabis license yet. And so it's going to, well, how do I show knowledge and experience? Are you a business owner? Good. You should be. You should understand how financial accounting works. And then 2 would be, what type of business did you own? Oh, was it pizzeria? Wow, you had to comply with a lot of food service regulations and requirements, I bet. Oh, you had a bar? Ooh, or a brewery? Man, that sounds like a lot of regulation. You were an insurance broker? Holy crap, insurance is just selling contracts. That is a highly regulated industry. You worked at a bank. That's fantastic. You know, if you've worked in an industry that has massive regulation, that's great. Now, if let's say you worked in a casino as a card dealer, that's pretty decent as well, because that's a retail experience. You're customer focused, highly regulated, lots of security, lots of cash handling too. And so those are all great ways that you can take your existing knowledge and experience and plug that in. But of course, you know, you're allowed to have up to 5 management contracts in the state. So, you know, call Berner and be like, hey, who's growing your shit? Yeah, does he want to get into a management agreement with me? He's allowed to have 5. At least in New Jersey. And then you build those types of teams. And so I'd put you in touch with our growers that are in Maine or in Massachusetts, or, I mean, if you want to get into Illinois or Michigan, cool. Closer in Colorado. And then you get the right cultivators in. I think the biggest knowledge gap will probably be in the manufacturing and the extraction. Retail is fairly easy to get, but the most important person is, of course, your social equity person, and your brand, your company's message of how it's giving back to the community, of how it is achieving the principles of the law. What are they again? Safety and equity. So and then of course they had that other list, but you have to address every single aspect of that. And then when there is an application, it'll say provide this, this, and this. One thing, how much time do we have left? I'll talk at you for another 10 minutes, and then we'll do 10 minutes or so of Q&A, and then I'm out, because I have to go live on Cannabis Legalization News, and all 16 of you watching, you know, you're welcome to join. And we're going to discuss the Safe Banking Act passing again, and what its likelihood is in the Senate. I might leave that up. Usually I have a green screen up, but I didn't think that I was able to do a green screen on this one. Okay, I am going to bring up the Illinois dispensary app. Well, first I'm going to do some more math for you, because you know that's why you really tuned in. Does anybody want to know how corrupt the Illinois lottery was? No? Okay. 1 in 31 trillion. That was the largest offender. And so a lottery is a lottery. And a lottery behaves according to a principle in math called the simple multiplication rule. And it's a rule. It's not a guideline. For example, if you have a lottery of 100 numbers, you've sold 100 tickets. You bought 1. what is your statistical likelihood of winning the lottery? 1 over 100. That is the simple multiplication rule. Now, if they are going to draw 5 lottery tickets and you have 1, what is the probability that you would get chosen? Well, it depends on the per instance. In the first round, it would be 1 out of 100. In the second round, it would be 1 out of 99. And the third, okay. And so, but then what is the likelihood that if you have, and I should change the math a little bit now, because if you have 1 ticket, you can't be picked 5 times. If you have 5 tickets out of the 100 tickets, you have a 5% chance of being picked 5 times. What is the likelihood that all 5 of your tickets will be picked if you do 5 rounds? That would be the simple multiplication rule. Well, what's the sample size? It's 5%. They're just going to run the same statistical set again and again and again. And I think that's what Illinois did. They just ran the same statistical set. They didn't take any ping pong balls out and say, like, number 7, draw the next one. It was the same 5% every time. So 5% times 5% times 5% times 5% times 5% is 1 in 3 million. Now, for some people, that 5% happened 7 times. And so that's when it gets 1 in 22 billion. Some people had a 20% chance of winning because they stuffed 20% of the tickets. They won 18 times. That is a simple multiplication rule for 20% to 18 is 1 in 38 trillion. So I'm glad that the guy went for the brass ring, but there is no chance in hell that that's what actually happened. And if we can get to discovery, which may be very difficult because of how due process works in these instances. Remember, it's a privilege, not a right. So we're going to have to get creative, but lawyers always do. And so the IDPFR is who did the Illinois stuff. And I want to pull up the dispensary application and go over the dispensary application with you so that you can understand what your state may end up doing. Let's see. Information regarding existing new dispensaries, October 19th rules. Okay, and there's that. Now, interestingly enough, the state of Illinois, and this is one of the reasons why I think New Jersey is taking longer. The state of Illinois came out with their conditional dispensing application a mere 4 months after they passed their law. They passed their law in late May of 2019, and by early October of 2019, so 4 months later, they came out with this application. And this application was actually changed. And then they changed the law during the application period. So one thing that you have to be ready for is to always be ready, because they will be changing stuff as it goes. This application was comprised of what they have here. This is one of the lawsuits they have right now. You see how those are marked optional? They were required. You could not be eligible for a license unless you had all of them. So it is fundamentally unfair. And then the statute is even written in this way. The reason why those are labeled optional is because the statute said they may include this. And then why these don't say optional is because in the statute they say they shall include that. And so we have a substantive constitutional due process right to fundamental fairness. And you can't have these arbitrary and capricious. You can't tell us that something's optional when it's required. That's not fair, but we'll see how the motion to dismiss goes. But then they have the descriptions of the exhibits, right? This non-refundable application fee. I do have a due process right in the property, being the $2,500 that I paid you. Okay, and so let's do an example of the business plan, because people always want to buy business plans. And so this is what they asked for in their business plan. Provide a plan that describes, at minimum, how the dispensary operation will, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and up to 6. But regulators don't stop there. They always slip something else in, And so there was 6 whole things that they slipped in there. And then what I would do is I would take that application, and then I would say, okay, The business plan's limit is 30 pages. Therefore, it's going to be 30 pages. And it wants those 6 things, but it also slipped in that 7th thing. And those are going to be your H tags, if you guys know how to make websites, or your headers, if you were going to create an outline for it. And I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't create an outline for something that they give you a page limit, because that takes up an extra page. You're trying to win. You're trying to get a perfect score on this business plan. This business plan is going to have point requirements or a point allocation that is set in the statute. And so you have to go through every single point of that and describe it in very detailed. And then you have to cite the regulations that are appropriate. And you also have to cite the statutory authority that is appropriate. So you really have your work cut out for you. But at least you have your work cut out for you. At least they're telling you what to do. Then you have to write the application in a method that is adequately, sufficiently specific, yet malleable. So I'm not going to try to paint you into a corner with all these shalls and when I could be using may, just like the statute did there, where they said these things were optional and they're clearly mandatory. And I don't want you to be writing this like, we shall do this. Our goal is to do this. Yes, it's a goal. That's what we're trying to get to. You know, how do you get smashed for that? If one of these regulators, who's maybe regulator doesn't care, he's just trying to make sure you follow the rules. That's it. And you're out of compliance with your application because you said shall use a particular brand of light that is now obsolete. You have to amend your application, because that application is a condition of your license. The state will charge another $1,000 fee for administration, or whatever your fee is in your state. Okay. And then after you've created an absolutely perfect, comprehensive, and complete application for the right team with the right lottery strategy, you submit it on time and you record this. You know, if you want to like do a screen share, you want to do some type of screen capture, send all the receipts to your lawyer, because you now are building a case. Then the state will kick back your application to see if you can jump through more hoops, because that's the name of the game. You're in the compliance regulation business. You're not in the cannabis business. It just happens to sell cannabis and grow it. And so then you're going to get through these RFIs, requests for information. Sometimes they're called NODs, notice of deficiency. And then to reduce the barriers of entry and to increase transparency and fairness in the process, in Illinois, they were required to provide notices of deficiencies if something was missing. And very often they did. And then very often they didn't. And mistakes were made. So your state might be trying to reduce barriers to entry by doing the same type of thing. And so you're going to get a lot of these notice of deficiencies coming back at you. And right now in Illinois, I have to go through and do 6 more for craft grows, because they just got issued yesterday, as we're getting close to the filing deadline for filing your petitions for administrative review, because now we're into the litigation area, right? You've submitted it. Now you're going to have to go through the rigmarole and make sure that you have a lawyer that's on the other side, because you're building evidence. Right? When they try to disqualify you, or they try to say that you don't get these points, your lawyer was there going, okay, we documented that here. We sent that to them. Great. Save that. That's another exhibit. Because if you don't get it and you need to petition for administrative review, and you have 35 days after the final administrative decision saying that you don't get the license, now you don't have to wait. You could already sue now. I don't know if you could sue in New Jersey right now. I mean, the medical ones have already sued. But TrueLeaf would sue Georgia during the application window to elongate the application window. Power move. Guess who came in first? TrueLeaf. They dropped the suit magically. They got a license. Lawsuits are licensed where licenses go to die, I guess. Nevada had a huge corruption scandal in 2018 that ended in a huge lawsuit that I think that's where Illinois is going. So much so that I found the settlement agreement in the Nevada lawsuit, downloaded it, and created a template for a settlement agreement from it. And you very often don't budget for these things. And so now you understand how the budgets are going to work. And it's just going to be getting higher and higher and higher. When's the revenue kick in? And so the first one is the smallest, because it's usually just hacking a lottery, checking some boxes, getting your number into the ping pong ball machine. Then you have to make sure that that's fair. That's tough. Then you have to get lucky through it or use statistical analysis to gain a statistical edge. I can help you with that. And then you have to put together the full application, which is hundreds of hours of work because it's hundreds of pages long, and it is literally the operating manual for your cannabis license. Everything that you put in there is a condition of your cannabis license. Then you have to submit that, and the state's going to be like, this was missing. And you have to submit that. And then the state's going to be like, that's missing. And then you have to like read it and go like, pursuant to right here on this page, we had actually provided for it. And the state of Illinois had the worst transparency in the sense that they would say things are missing in the alternative, so you have no idea what's wrong. Some people that are my clients, they'd say like, I feel like I'm in an abusive relationship with the state. And I'm like, well, I don't blame you. State must. And then after you got the full application in, now you've submitted it, great. Hopefully they don't kick it back too long because now you're in that conditional window where you have to get approvals. And then after you've gotten those, you have to get operational. So it's just an ever-ending ascent of spending before the money comes in. And the worst of that is for the growers because then now you've gone through all that crap. Okay, now you have your cultivation license. Now you got to stand up this building. Now you need the guy who has the financial source agreement that with the $2 million liquid. Hello, Mr. Qualified Purchaser. Yes, under the Investment Act of 1940. Great. I've been looking for people like you. That person does his thing, parks money in there. Now you can access financing to build your construction. And then if the Safe Banking Act totally passes, I got 5 minutes before I have to drop off, by the way, so I can go talk about that on Cannabis Legalization News. You'll be able to get even cheaper loans. And there's loans that are out there now. They aren't terribly unreasonable, 12, 15%, somewhere in there. Illinois has actually got one for their social equity that's 8%. But you're going to see regular style loans in the next few years. So that'll be great. But you still need that guy that's got the liquidity to be able to park that money into a bank and then have real estate collateral that's securing the indebtedness so that you can capitalize that. But with that, I hope I haven't scared you guys too badly. I do want to go over one more little handout that I have that I've included, and have I opened up a copy of this so I can share it on my screen? It doesn't look like I have. And then I am going to be publishing a how-to series on my channel. The first one is how to win a cannabis license in New Jersey, so do check that out. Let me go to downloads, Cannabis Business Mastermind. This is my core offering product because out of like the 200 people that talk to me every month, this is appropriate for at least 75% of them. Sometimes the person has a license, like 10%, 15% of my calls are with people who actually have a license in the cannabis industry, 10 or 15% are in hemp. And then the other 70, 75% want to get into the cannabis industry and they need learning. And so I used to sell this as just a business plan, a pitch deck, and a financial model. But I'm turning it into this so that you guys can get, your business plan and you understand it, because I'm going to walk you through your business plan. And your financial model, how well do you guys understand a cannabis company's financial model? Like, when was the last time you were looking at a Dispo's financial model or a Grow's financial model? So we go through our model that we use. We explain it to you. There's somebody that you can hire at a reasonable hourly rate to customize for it. And then we go over your pitch deck, because you have to go find the guy with the liquidity. How are you going to find the guy with the liquidity? We go over branding a lot, because the brand is so important. You put it into your application, and your brand really should be based off of what your city or state wants. Team building, we talk about that a lot in there, and the community and compliance. Your community, especially in New Jersey, but like pretty much everywhere, is a very local industry. And so then we also have some a letter of intent, a letter of commitment. That's not a letter of commitment. I need to tell Lauren to change that. An LLC is a line of credit. She's not the bank lawyer that I was, but that's okay, because it still looks pretty nice. And with that, I will open it up for a few minutes of questions. There are about 20 people in the room. So if you guys have a question, go ahead and let me see if we can make this work. All right, I'm not getting any questions, so I'm assuming that you guys are good. Let's see. Any questions whatsoever? Well, I gave you a couple of those handouts. Hopefully you guys have taken those. And let's see, in the session, there's a couple of sessions going on right now. There's a few more in the future. Again, if you guys have any questions, hit them up right there in Q&A. I'll ask myself one just to make sure the software is working. Is this software working? Oh, I saw it. I'm going to heart it. Nice. What a good time. Okay, I hope that was helpful, guys. Like I said, I don't mean to dip, but I do have a tight window here because the cannabis legalization news that we do is a live one. And we're testing some new videos. Cool. Awesome. And I don't see my handouts. All right, let me just, I know that I uploaded those. Oh, okay, there's one, there's two. Publish. I didn't know that you had to, there was a slider on the handouts. So go ahead, now check out the handouts. Then there's something in discussion that's up. Is the software working? Yes, it is. And then he doesn't see his handouts. Cheryl, hopefully you got those handouts now. I turned that back on. Any other questions? There's 20 people here. You got $400 an hour. Nothing? Well, I hope that was helpful. Most people would not have read the regulations and said, oh, look, here's a huge glaring hole that we could create 7 times the applications if we get the right team together. But I did. And I'm looking for partners in New Jersey that want to orchestrate very sophisticated and strategic applications in the state. I'm hopeful that the state will open soon. Right now, it's Ohio. It's Ohio and it's Connecticut that is probably going to be next. Ohio's open right now. Ohio's very fascinating, and it's a different game entirely. Ohio, like real estate, is real important in Ohio. After that, talk to me and John Makowicz, and we can give you some competitive edge in how to approach once you have the real estate. And so real estate will be big, and then Ohio's a big lift as well. After you win, you're going to have a full compliant application. But Ohio likes to work more with business. I hope it's not as bad as Illinois. Illinois was just like in Chicago, they do whatever they want. Where do I see New York going? I think I see the problem that I have with New York, New Jersey, Illinois. That's where organized crime's from. All right. One guy in the New York in the Illinois lottery won in 212 billion. I mean, come on, that didn't happen. And I had never heard of this person before, and so I don't know how much of a family business it is. But I see New York and New Jersey being open states, more like Michigan, but I don't know how open they'll actually be. I love the New Jersey thing with how they're kind of setting it up like a hedge fund. That's my long play right there. If I was talking to the guys from Terra Ascend again, I'd be like, okay, guys, this is what we're going to do. And then talking to really wealthy people with money is kind of tricky sometimes because they know what they're going to do. They just want you to tell them that that's great and you're going to be able to help them. They usually don't win. It's kind of nice. But New York's going to do the same thing that New Jersey and Illinois is doing. Everybody wants to have this press conference. We did the best cannabis ever. We did it right because we took our time. We have the most diverse cannabis industry that is open to the small entrepreneurs, that preserves social justice and social equity and equality. And out of all of our applicants, there was 2/3 are social equity applicants and 2/3 are minority owned or priority. In New York, I don't know if they're going to have priority like they do in New Jersey. Maybe they will. But New Jersey, they'll say it was 100% priority applicants and 2/3 were minority priority applicants, something like that. That's just been where Illinois went, and it looks based on who's in charge of the regulations, where New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut are going. And if I was a black woman from New Jersey, was arrested, incarcerated for cannabis, that would be a hot ticket. especially if she was a veteran too. And those people are out there. There's just not very many. And I really like that New Jersey has taken protections to prevent them from being as exploited as they were in Illinois, or they could be in Illinois. We're still shaking that thing out. Okay, the next thing is I'm going to have to bounce because I'm going to be live in 5 minutes. But I see New York being a huge opportunity. I see New Jersey being a huge opportunity for regular entrepreneurs, like people that are diverse, that want to get into the business, female entrepreneurs, veteran entrepreneurs, minority entrepreneurs, all great. But you will probably need a capital partner, and the capital partner regulations that they built into New Jersey, I think, are novel and excellent so far. And I hope that something like that comes to New York, and I hope something like that comes to Illinois, to be honest, because that would have changed the approach and changed the game compared to where the game was with the rules that they gave. And so you have to understand that. You need to be exactly what the state's looking for, and you have to also know exactly the rules the state have set up so that you can successfully get through there. Anyway, thanks, guys. Tune into Cannabis Legalization News starting in 4 minutes. All right, I'm going to go backstage.